Hey, what's up, guys? Hylian here, and today we're going to be talking about that finally happened, the Zelda trailer, Zelda gameplay. It only took, what, 3.5 years?
Yeah, pretty
So,
much.
a
So
couple days ago, we saw 10 minutes of Tears of the Kingdom, and we're just here to discuss it.
this is
How do you feel
almost
about
like
this gameplay
a
we saw?
it's almost like a Sakurai Presents because it's like it's not as personable, but like oh Mr. Aonuma plays, oh that's pretty cool.
He
But
had a
it's
few
yeah
jokes in there. He had a little bit of personality in it.
yeah. So I will say starting right away, pre-watching this, like I think a lot of us were just worried that because it's based in the same engine, same world, we're just like, other than the few little things that we saw that was different around Hyrule, the rebuilding projects, the weird, the Sky Islands, whatever, we were, you know, is there breathing in the background?
Oh, there shouldn't be.
What's it? I hear like weird breathing, unless your
Maybe,
microphone's like
maybe we're
peaking.
being haunted.
Oh,
I
that's a
hope
little weird.
not.
Sorry, I don't know.
No, you're good.
But yeah, we were just so like, how much is different about this game? Like, it can't just be this, the Sky Islands. We still don't have confirmation of dungeons. But even if you look at the opening shot, everyone was like, oh fuck, like how much is different? Because it looked exactly the same as Breath of the
Yeah.
Wild, except for very minor UI changes. We're like, oh shit. And then
Oh, yeah, I won't.
I'm relieved now. My stress has gone away after this gameplay. I think there's enough in there that's different. Again, we don't have confirmation. I'm glad, what they're keeping secret is they're keeping secret. But I'm at least a little bit more relieved that it is not just the same. And I think a lot of it is going to be, and some people might be disappointed by that. But I think there's enough different to warrant a sequel. To warrant $70, that's a different question. But to warrant a sequel, I think we're in for a wild ride. So
Well, like you were saying, I made a tweet a few days ago before we knew about this presentation that I just wanted to see the UI. I was so excited to see the UI.
the UI
So
is
like
exactly the same.
the first shot, all we see that's different is the coordinates and the new Apple. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, they changed literally nothing basically.
So
Um,
yeah, I mean,
Go
there's
ahead.
a couple of control changes. The inventory has moved to the up button. I don't know what was there before.
It
Um,
was how you've I think it was how you changed rune abilities.
oh, rune abilities. Yeah.
Yeah,
So they moved that to the L button, which I believe
yeah.
used to be. Um,
It was like how I think you activated the runes. I
Maybe I
think
think
that's.
so.
I literally played Breath of the Wild today. I should have a definitive
Yeah.
answer for you.
I haven't played it in a minute, so I don't know. I think there's just a little bit of QOL touch ups to the UI. It's
Yeah,
mostly the same. Obviously, the inventory has been moved up to the up, which we'll talk about later why that's the case. Um, and of course, the normal. I'm sure plus is the same as well, which
yeah.
I hope there's a overhaul there in UI. But again, opening shot. I have a couple of theories for you. First of all,
Go
the
for it.
map is mostly the same. It's not filled out yet, so we don't know too much there. I think there's a reason for that. But if you
Well, the
look,
reason is we don't have the Sheikah Slate anymore, so it's actually a different map.
yeah, oh, well, it might just be a map.
That's exactly. It might just be like a generic map, a new system, whatever. It might just
Yeah,
be a paper
but there
map.
there are there are there is a section of the game where it is filled in, but it's in the sky.
Yeah,
Uh, so right away, if you look in the far background, there is a tower. So even though they're not Sheikah towers, we will be having towers. They're going to be in different locations, which is a little weird because again, if this is mostly the same map, some of the places where the Sheikah towers were in very thought about locations to evenly distribute the map and to like basically put where like more important areas of the game were where you would want a warp point. They're very strategically placed. Here they are in different locations, which makes me wonder how much of the map has changed. Like, why is this spot more important than where it was before? And I'm sure some of them are in the exact same spot that they were before, just some of the shots that we have seen are different. But even though they're not Sheikah towers, towers of some variety are back. We see a couple of them in multiple trailers and in this one, and I'm pretty sure that these are the replacements to Sheikah towers 100%. They're going to
more
serve
than likely, yeah.
they're going to serve the same function. They're not going to have any dungeons. Maybe they'll provide an item now, but they're largely going to be the same. Um, moving on, again, this was the shot that most people were scared of. Literally, as soon as Link pans around, we see a bigger change. Even though the land is mostly the same, we see Guardians are just completely wiped. Zero Guardians. I think that's really cool detail. And I think instead we have pieces of Sky Islands that are fallen to the ground, and I think some of the ruins that were still there are just still there. Um, but then we see the puff of smoke, which I is that the new, or well, it'll lead into my theory, but actually we see a second tower and pretty plain as day here as well. Um, oh yes, so the puff of smoke looks like stables might have a new function, maybe because the smoke wasn't there before. Um, but I kind of want to take
I've
this.
seen
I know we're
I've
kind of
seen
doing a
theories.
breakdown at this point,
Yeah,
but
you're good.
there's a couple
No,
of
I've seen
points that I want to talk about. But go ahead.
I've seen theories that it's either the smoke is to like kind of make it easier when you're skydiving to land near a stable, but it
Yeah,
also might be that there's like a new cooking feature inside of the stables. There might be like a new
yeah,
blacksmith or something like that. You never know.
yeah. I think it might be a new feature, but I think they didn't really think about what things look from up above. So I think that is probably a good idea as well. So looking when Link or Alnuma starts looking more at the hill, you'll notice that obviously the what were they called? The dungeons, not the dungeons.
The
Shrines.
shrines.
Shrines are gone. They're just who knows what the fuck happened to them. They're just gone. But we see a new thing that we've seen before. But we were thinking, oh, it's just we saw the weird symbols before underneath the castle. So we're like, oh, what is that? What could that possibly be? This is where my theory comes in. Shrines are back. Shrines are 100% back, and we'll see more why later in the trailer because there are symbols that look strangely close to shrine symbols. So these aren't going to be actually shrines. They're going to be more like Zonai shrines, and there's going to be far, far less of them in them.
Yes.
This will be they'll provide for a new warp point because they had to have some sort of replacement for shrines because they were warp points. So I think they're going to be largely the same. I think they're just going to be mini dungeons, but they're going to be contextually different. And those were my two big points, other than caves, which we'll talk about later.
See, my thing is, I have to kind of shut my mouth on a lot of things because I don't know if you've seen the art book leak. I have. So
No,
there's
I
like
haven't.
things that I don't want to discuss, just out of fear of spoiling anything.
Mm-hmm.
My theory right now, though, is I think you're absolutely right. I think those are going to be Zonai trials, Zonai kind of shrines or whatever. I think there'll be like 40 to 60 of them in the world, so they're going to be greatly cut back from what we had in Breath of the Wild. And I think we're actually going to get. I don't want to call them traditional dungeons. I want to call them a mix of like Hyrule Castle and Breath of the Wild and traditional dungeons. And we'll get
Mm-hmm.
like 5 to 7 of those and each one will give us a tier to the kingdom or whatever it is, tier of the
Yeah,
kingdom.
yeah.
But that wasn't shown today. We still have no info. We got no more info about story, any more info about dungeons, stuff like that. So let's stay focused on what was actually shown.
Yeah, so going back to this, it doesn't look like there's too many Sky Islands, which is a little disappointing. This is a very small section of Hyrule. But before, we saw, at least in visible distance, there was a few right away. But I think they're going to be more like clusters. I think there's going to be a cluster here, cluster there. Um, and because in the trailers it looked like there was a lot of them, I think they're going to be scattered throughout Hyrule. And I think there's going to be very, very specific places where the Sky Islands are going to be. And they're not actually Sky Islands. They're literally just pieces of the land taken up to the sky. And they might be completely different layout. I don't really know exactly how exact the layout of the land is here, but it looks like some of the places just went up. I mean, we saw this with the black box, or the boxes, dungeons or trials or whatever.
Mm.
We see that literally areas get shot up, but I think the area that Al Nuno goes to specifically is an entirely new area, which begs the question: where do they come from?
So I'm
Um,
actually gonna contradict that. I don't think any of the land, besides maybe like the mason stuff, gets shot up from like
so
basecamp. I
zero of
think
it.
my theory right now is these just always existed, and for some reason they're not making themselves shown, or that they came from the sacred realm.
See, the weirdest
I
thing is that they're almost like they're torn apart. They're not like
But they
a
are not. They don't look similar to anything we've seen in
yeah,
Hyrule.
and that's what I'm
As
saying. I don't I was that wasn't like an actual theory of mine. I just like they seem broken apart. They don't seem like it seemed like they used to be one cohesive landmass, but now
right.
they're
Okay.
not. So I wonder like where did they come from? If they came from the sacred realm or whatever. Anyway, going back to the ground here for a second, it looks like most of the changes of Hyrule won't be in landscape. It's going to be in placements of the towers, placements of the Zonai shrines, and the new Hyrule renovation project, which means shrines will be gone. Looks like there's going to be some houses and the lack of. I think it's going to be a nice, cleaner Hyrule. But my question is, how much of a difference is it, and is it going to frustrate people? Because it's like it's the same place.
Again, just due to certain leaks and stuff, I don't want to say too much on this, but it looks like a substantial bit of time has passed between games.
And I think that
At
makes sense,
least, at
but
least a few years.
I think this is a more vastly open Hyrule um, compared to previous ones. So not everything is more tightly packed. And again, that was a lot of people's concern with the original game is that there was just too much open space and there wasn't too much visually going on. So looking at it, hopefully there's a lot more going on because previously it was just ruins and broken guardians. So
Yeah.
maybe there's more towns now because it has been so much long time or such a
Right.
long time, or maybe hell maybe previously we had Lon Lon Ranch destroyed. What if Lon Lon Ranch was just straight up back and it looked exactly like 64?
That'd be so
Things like
cool.
that. Things like that. So I mean, it looks like renovation was starting, but most of the shots that we've seen they were left incomplete due to the new calamity. And I
Yeah,
don't
but
know, maybe there is some stuff that is complete.
But like they spent so much time focusing on the Sky Islands. We've seen that little bit of area
Because
around
they
the
didn't want
dueling
to
peaks.
they didn't want to
Yeah,
tell
no,
us
they
that it's gonna
we
exactly the same.
literally we've seen that little bit of the start around the dueling peaks, and then that tiny little bit on the other side of them after Link comes back down to the surface. They showed us
Yeah.
basically nothing, but you still see so many differences. Like there looks like there's a new like wall built onto the mountainside close to Kakariko that they didn't give any info on. So there's a
Yeah.
lot to. I think there's going to be a lot of changes in this world, thankfully.
Yeah. So now going on to the Sky Isle, I know I feel like I'm taking control of this, and we might be
Oh,
longer
go
than I
for it.
thought, but there's a lot of I'm kind of invested now. Um, we okay, so because there's so many Sky Islands and they're so disconnected, and it seems like we have the same stamina system. It's just like I feel like people are gonna have a really rough time um with gliding because it seems like you're going to be doing it a lot more often other than saving yourself from a height because you have to go from island to island and you know going back down is a little easier because you can skydive and then you can seemingly
Yeah.
use your glider. It literally looks like Fortnite, like beat for beat. um but yeah, what do you think on that?
I mean, I think I'm not too worried about the stamina system. It was a little bit of a bummer to see you're back down to one wheel, you're back down to like three or four hearts. It makes sense, but it's always a bummer. Like it's a direct sequel.
Mm,
I'm kind of thinking, like you mentioned before, they're going to be in like small little clusters, like a couple of islands at each section. And I think they're not going to expect you to travel far beyond that. I
mm-hmm.
think for people both returning from Breath of the Wild and people picking up this one as just their first Zelda in this style, it's going to be traversing like the landscape because
Mm-hmm.
unlike Breath of the Wild, you want to cross a river, you can't just use Cryonis anymore. You
You're
can't
gonna want
just hop
to
across
build.
it. Exactly.
Speaking of, we what was I? Oh, um, yeah. So the first ability that we see is so these are basically we confirm this now. Runes are just gone and they're replaced by
Yeah.
new four elements, which I assume one will be amiibo and maybe we'll have a capture ability or a picture ability as well. These are just straight up replacement for runes. And what's great about this is that they're completely different and they're not just like one replaces the other. These are completely new, and they probably have really cool puzzle ideas as well. And
Oh,
that's
for
what I'm
sure.
really excited about. And who knows, we might even see the return of items as well. We haven't even got that confirmed yet. It could be as well.
Well, one point in the favor of that, maybe we just haven't seen it. Maybe it's focused on arrows. We have not seen any evidence of bombs as of yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe there might be more that we don't know about either. But
Oh, there for sure is.
maybe the return of bombs is actual bombs, and again, the item diversity because of the combination, which we'll talk about later. There's so much item diversity that if they bring back traditional items, like I'm just ideas are flowing through my mind, just like how crazy. Like think about like a long shot with a spear attached to it. There's just
Oh, don't get my hopes
like
up.
there's so many things that they could do just with traditional items as well. But we start
Yeah.
off with the first one, which is kind of a bummer. It's just the rewind time feature. But I think this is basically the replacement for the
Stasis.
stasis. These, we already seen multiple different effects with this, rolling balls back up. This will be our main traversal to the Sky Islands. I can't really think of too many other purposes, like in puzzle solving, but I'm sure there is.
I don't I don't know if you remember, but E3 2021, we actually saw this move being used to reverse like a large ball with a bunch of spikes, sent it back towards like enemies. So
Yeah,
it is going to
I
be
was
used in
referring to
battle.
that. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Sweet.
yeah. So that's the only thing I can think of. But
Yeah.
puzzle solving, I'm not really too sure what they could do with that. But
I'm
it's pretty
sure they'll
cool.
think of something.
Um, but again, it looks like you don't have very much control over this. So I would understand like maybe you're in the middle of a battle and the ball's rolling towards you and you're like, oh, roll it back up. But these blocks
Yeah.
seemingly were just there unless we watched it fall. Did we watch it fall? I don't think that we
Yeah.
did.
Well, that's the thing. Aonuma was like, "Hey, you see this thing falling from the sky? Let's go to it." And then unless my vision and like depth perception is completely off, he went to a different one that fell. So
Yeah.
we actually do see these things falling from the sky. It's just
Okay.
a matter of maybe some will already have been there, some you watch as it
Yeah, because if you
happens.
just like in the first shot when we see all these scattered pieces of the Sky Islands, like who knows where that came from? If you just, some of these things you gotta have to put some guesswork in it. Um,
Exactly.
because especially with how free form that is. So then we get into the next shot where he's showing off the Sky Islands. It looks really cool, by the way. That's when the map starts to become more filled out. So even though the world is seamless, it seems like we might have two different maps. One for Sky Islands, and which, by the way, some of these Sky Islands, even though there's clusters, they are huge. There's so much to explore with each little cluster. So looking at this, it seems like there's going to be two separate maps. One for the Sky Islands, one for the bottom, and it seems like the bottom wasn't filled out for him, but the Sky Islands were. Um,
I'm gonna say there's even a possibility we could have a third map for underground exploration because there
yes,
is
and there is,
signs
yeah,
pointing to.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
we'll get to that in a bit.
um, yeah. So he's just exploring the Sky Islands here. Not too much. It's just regular exploration. It just looks a little different. I think that what's really cool about this is that there is some visual identity between the Sky Islands and the bottom. Um, and then he starts talking about stamina. So, or not stamina, weapon durability. So there was two main
Yes.
problems with the original game that people had gripes with, and that was weapon durability and um, weapon durability and climbing up ladders or climbing up, during weather, like bad weather.
The rain,
You can't,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and obviously the stamina system. So
Exactly.
I think he answered both of those problems for us. Here, we are introduced to the combination system. He's like, oh, my branch broke. What am I going to do now? And oh, yeah, he starts fighting a Zonai creature, which that's a whole other conversation.
We actually see those on the ground too at the very beginning of the gameplay, which is exciting.
But what's cool is that there's good ones and bad ones. And that actually leads
Yes.
into a theory that I forgot to mention before. There was a Korok down there, which means Koroks are probably back. But what's cool is I think they're going to be a little bit more involved. And one of the questions that I talked about in our tier list discussion is that I wish the side quests were more involved. And it seems like we're going to be getting that, especially with the Koroks, which desperately needed it as well. And it seems like we're gonna have some good Zonai, some bad Zonai. I don't know what the difference is gonna be. Maybe the one. Well, no, there was a good one in the sky too. So I don't know what the disparity is. But now we have confirmation that they are Zonai. So
Yeah.
yeah. So he just fights it. We got the Zonai charge, which we don't know what the Zonai charge does, but it did drop another thing that goes into the weapon combination as
Yep.
well. Looks like, oh yeah, so this is the new ability, which is what did he call it?
Fuse.
Fuse. Okay, so fuse. This basically answers the question of weapon durability, and I don't know if your weapon just restarts its durability now because it has it, or maybe there's two separate durabilities. Like you start swinging the stick and the rock breaks, and now you have the stick again.
Yeah.
That is a question that could be asked.
I mean, I assume the base weapon will keep the same durability, but the item that goes on it extends it.
So
That's
it's a
my
durability extender, not two separate
yeah.
durabilities.
But I mean, on the contrary to that is there's always the possibility that there is blacksmiths in this game that can repair your weapons because obviously you're not going to care much about a stick and a rock,
Yeah.
but you might for like one of
So
your high valued swords and stuff like that.
I think this obviously answers the question of durability, but this opens up in a completely separate door that's completely separate to that. So fuse is actually used with all of your weapon types, your swords,
Yep.
your shields, and your bow and arrow, which now means you don't need to have fire arrows, ice arrows and bomb arrows. You just have bombs and arrows, and which leads to the question of probably bombs will be regular items again, and you can now do so many things with this. So shields in Breath of the Wild were kind of weird because they were just shields and there's no
Yeah.
really differences between them. Now you can put a puff mushroom on it and you can have fog everywhere, and there's
Yep.
so many different things, especially if they start thinking of creative ideas. Because like right now I'm thinking, okay, what are you gonna do if you have a stake on a shield? You can do that, but why would you want to do that? Maybe there's a reason for it. Who knows? Or
There's gotta be.
maybe what can you put a Kisai on the shield for? Because there's again, this is one of the creative things that they did. If you put a Kisai on an arrow, it's homing. That's pretty cool. There's so many different creative things I can think, especially if they do have traditional items back, bombs or whatever. What if you combined a bomb with a sword? What if you combined a bomb with something else? Hell, what if you started using not traditional items like the item drops in combination with the vehicles that you can make?
Yeah.
What if you
What
could create
excites
like
me the
a
most
gun on your car or your whatever?
But no, what excites me the most is just when he was looking through the arrow stuff just to see what to put on his arrow.
It's
Is there's
all of
so many
them.
new items that we haven't seen, and it looks
Yeah.
like it is a large number of items.
Yeah, so first things first, it seems like all weapons are fusible. There might be a few where it's like you can't do that. But like
Yeah.
you can see like he puts a Korok leaf, assuming there's no benefit to putting the Korok leaf on the arrow. He does it anyway because he can. Or he
I'm
has it
assuming it
there.
have. I'm assuming it'll have like a wind effect. Is my
Maybe.
best guess.
But presumably you can put anything on there. We already see a bunch of new items. I think the amber actually changed its design for some reason.
It looks like it, yeah.
We have a leek. Let's see, what else does he have? A couple of mushrooms. But and then but like the options there is it's pretty clearly all of the items that you have in your inventory, which for me when I was playing the game, like I didn't have too much use for choo choo jellies. They were used in potions, and some people didn't use the cooking system, but I think that this adds so much more use to the items because most of the items you probably didn't use, and like what was the reason of picking them up? So I think if they had
Exactly.
some sort of use for all of these items on arrows and things like that, because there was a use for all the items in cooking and potions and all that, but they're not you weren't going to use all of them, but maybe
Yeah.
having whatever. Oh, you know what, you could use the stake as a luring mechanism. You could shoot the arrow with the stake, and then something could come and you get it, and then you start attacking it with like a backslash, or what is it called?
Exactly.
A backstab or whatever.
The
So
stealth
there's so
strike,
many
whatever it's
things.
called.
Yeah. So you see what I'm saying? Like there's so many uses for all of these things, and even before with most people, a lot of people probably didn't use the cooking system. They probably just picked up what they had on the ground and ate that, or just recharged that at bed, whatever. So having more use for items is very good, especially with how many items are in this game, and then obviously looking into the prospect that there's more items in this game now, is there's so much more that they can do.
Absolutely.
Do you want to take the helm for a little bit?
Yes, I was
Sorry.
remembering what the next thing they used is.
The mushroom
I
on the
want to.
shield. Yeah.
Yeah, the mushroom on the shield. We already talked about that a little bit. The Ultra Hand.
Ultra
So
hand.
he shows up at the little river. He's like, so I don't have enough stamina to cross this, and obviously stasis isn't in this game. So he's like, how am I gonna cross this river? There's a few pieces like wood planks, wood logs, and he uses this new Ultra Hand move, and you can attach these things to basically it looks like anything that can be grabbed,
Movable, yeah.
and uses like this green goop or whatever it is, and you can just attach anything you want to make
Yeah.
it, in this case, a boat.
And what's cool is that this is not an answer to any questions, but people were already doing this in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so I mean, like, it was very limited because it wasn't an actual feature, but people were doing it. So this is so cool to see this basically fully realized, and now I will say this is a very cool feature, and the prospect of what you could possibly do to solve puzzles is this is probably the biggest thing that I'm thinking, like, with puzzle solving, is just this. Um, I just think it's a lot more cumbersome than stasis, because like then you have to think about, okay, well, you know, what do I need to build here? Is it going to work? Because remember he said, oh, he had them straight across and then it broke. So it's just like
Yeah.
there's so much more thought than it needs to be just to cross a river. You know what I'm
And I
saying?
like that it's trial and error. You've actually got to use your brain. You got to figure out what'll work
And
best.
I think that's
And
fine for puzzle solving, but for exploration, that's a little too much.
I mean, I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of examples that this is going to be need to be done. Like if you need to cross like a heavy body of water, chances are the stuff's going to be there for you. You can figure out at least a simple way of going about it, or you can just take the long way around and travel on the actual land.
hmm What's
But
What's also cool
oh,
about this is that it is basically a crafting system, and not only did they revolutionize open world, but they now revolutionize the crafting system. Which I don't honestly, the only thing I can think of is nuts and bolts. Is the only thing that done something similar to this.
yeah, that game was bad.
Yeah,
And I'm the Banjo Kazooie fan, so that means something.
yeah. So I mean,
But
that's literally the only game that I can think of that did something like this.
well, I mean, I think they did see the years upon years of just all the amazing creativity that players were doing in Breath of the Wild,
hmm
and just use that as tools to make this game so much better. Because you could
Yeah,
see flying machines, stuff like that, and there were so many of those in Breath of the Wild that people figure out how to make work. That
yeah.
it's really cool to have like an in-game reason now.
Yeah, I think what's just really cool about this is just the prospect of just what can be done puzzle wise, what can be done exploration wise. There's so much that could be done with this, and
Exactly.
we are already before Breath of the Wild, people are finding different ways to beat the game. It's completely open world and free form. That the probably the best part about the game is to experiment and see what you can do, and
Exactly.
this opens up a whole new world for that. Imagine if they had the runes and this. Like there would be so much more that you can do. But already with these new abilities, you've already doubled the experimentation. I think. I think it's pretty
Yeah,
much doubled.
I agree.
And I mean, people are still finding out new things in Breath of the Wild. So imagine 7, 8 years after this game comes out, people still finding new stuff to do.
No, exactly.
And
And then
some theories might even suggest that this could be potential for building houses and stuff like that for side quests.
I mean, there is a bunch of plots of land that we were seeing in just that little bit of area by the Dueling Peak stable, so I think it's very likely that that's going
hmm
to be a side quest while just rebuilding stuff the way you can, or that those might just be there for building materials for
hmm
the Ultra Hand, though. That could be
hmm
a little less exciting, but Could
So
be either or.
now the second answer to one of our bigger problems.
Is oh my gosh. So we saw this a couple years ago. It's the ascend
Yeah,
ability.
so we knew what it
So,
was, but we thought, oh, there's only specific points that we can do it in. This is the way to get to the Sky Island, whatever. But this is completely different, and I
his exact
honestly,
his exact wording was this has a few exceptions, but as long as there is a roof or like a ceiling above you, you
mhm.
should be able to use it.
I think the few exceptions are in dungeons, unless you absolutely need to, because it could break the dungeon, and going from the ground to the Sky Island. I don't think it you could do that.
Well, yeah, no, you're not gonna be able to do it that high. But I think it's really gonna be like a if you need to use it in dungeons or whatever, they'll have like a special like ceiling piece or whatever that you can actually transfer through.
Yeah. And I think in the same way, I think that this will mainly be used to combat climbing because climbing people didn't like climbing in the rain and climbing or and then especially if we do have some sort of cave system, which I think we can talk about now because there's
Yeah,
the
so
icon is here, but I assume you'll be able to get out of a cave this way.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, we've seen these little small cave icons on the mini map and like the HUD. We've gone into one to show off the ascendability. I think I think underground exploration, especially in the overworld, is going to be not as important as Sky Island exploration, but I think it is going to be a really big deal. I think you're going to see a lot of stuff underground just because it's entirely new space they can work in. And I mean, if it has its own icon on the map, I think that means it's a pretty big
Yeah.
deal.
So what's weird about this is that we already know that there's a replacement for shrines. I mean, on this screen that I'm at right now, which is him walking down the stairs with the mini map, we see the Zonai shrine icon, and it looks exactly like a shrine icon, but a little different. So we know that they're
Yeah,
basically the replacements for shrines. But looking at the cave, there's a specific icon for the caves because previously on in Breath of the Wild, there was only very few icons. There was one for stables, which we see in this too, one for shrines, one for Chica Towers, and then I think maybe there was some for some towns, right?
there
Some,
was towns and like I want to say specific shops, but not maybe not
yeah,
even that.
yeah. So looking at it here, I mean, there's a check mark next to it, which I'm like, what is that? Because it makes it sound like caves are completable, which
Yeah, exactly.
which is like, okay, so either the caves are also shrines, or I just don't understand like what would be the need for, especially if you explore it and you're like, well, there's not much in it, and you get out and there's a check mark. It's like why do I need to know that I explored it? You know, unless there's a specific reason to go in there and get the check mark, because there's going to be completionists that's going to go out there and get every single check mark on every single cave. So it's just like, so why?
Well, I'm just like I'm looking at the one cave we got a little bit of like image for like gameplay for before he used the ascend ability,
Yeah.
and it really doesn't look like much. And
Yeah, I'm
just
actually gonna look back in
in that
there.
one little circle of the mini map, there is three cave icons. Two on the little section he's on right there, and it looks like there's another sky island above him that's gonna have a cave. So I'm
Yeah,
not. My current theory is the ones on the Sky Islands are not going to be very big, but then like once you get back into like mainland Hyrule, those are where you're going to get like the more in-depth caves.
those okay, and also it looks like where the icons are a place where the entrances are, not necessarily like the cave itself, but
Yeah.
in that case scenario where he does use the ascend ability, it's almost like that's the both entrances to the same cave. So why I just don't understand why there needs to be a check mark.
I mean, maybe there's like either it'll like give you the check mark once you do all the exploration in it, or like there's like a certain item you have to find or something. Maybe instead of Korok Seed, there's like a special thing you can get every time you complete a cave or something like that.
Yeah. All right, and the
But yeah,
next
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's about all I can guess for it.
Another thing that's really cool is it seems like the Zonai characters are going to be able to use the same abilities you are, which is really cool. Having the fuse ability, and maybe they can ascend too. That would be really cool if they could do that. seeing them just walking around doing their thing and then ascending. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty cool as well. All right,
No,
dude.
that'd be.
This is where you
I mean,
completely
like,
take the helm here.
we're kind of nearing the end here. At this point, we come back to one of the, I forget what the monsters are called, so forgive me on that. But, um, Aonuma basically says that monsters and stuff like that will also have the fused weapons sometimes too, just to, like switch up the gameplay. And this guy has like a sword with like I'm assuming is a door, like it's a branch with like a door on top of it, and he just yeets him right off the
Yeah.
Sky Island.
And this is
And
where you have all your theories.
oh my goodness. Okay, so these aren't really my theories. It's stuff I've seen on Twitter, stuff I've seen in like YouTube discussions. But
So
as we're going down,
let's start with like what we see first, not just like the theories. So
yeah,
when
I'm
so looking at it gameplay wise, I mean it looks like you have very little control. Like you will not be able to go as far as you can in like say Fortnite, even though it looks very similar to that.
well, I'm guessing there's gonna be like like certain accessories or something like that you can give Link to kind of become a flying squirrel.
Maybe.
That's
Um,
my guess, but yeah.
and you can accelerate. I think that's pretty cool. Um, it seems like it's very limited, but this seems even though it's just gliding, it's like an entirely new system jumping off the sky islands here. And we've seen this in the other trailers, but now that we see a little bit more on how that works, I think the coolest thing to me is how seamless it is, especially because I'm pretty sure that the game lags when you use the master cycle. I mean, like
Yeah.
what? I mean, like you see everything from up
Well,
here.
remember, Breath of the Wild was mostly built on the Wii U.
Yeah.
So there was limitations to that. But I mean,
I mean, you
this
see
feels like
everything. You see
this
everything.
feels like what Skyward Sword's like diving wanted to be. But
Yeah,
obviously
I
that couldn't
fully
happen.
realize. Yeah, the biggest thing to me is just how much they're able to render. It's insane.
No, exactly. It's amazing how good this looks even that high
Man,
up.
every time I see this game, even though it looks like it's built on Breath of the Wild's engine, I'm like, how the fuck is this running on Switch? There's no way it's gonna
Remember
look that good.
remember Monolith also helped on this game and they're wizards when it comes to world design.
True, but they're like far away rendering because there's so many different layers to their
That's
world.
true.
There,
Yeah.
if you look really closely, that you can tell it's like there's some smoothing going on, but here it's just like you can see everything.
No, absolutely. But looking at the world as we're seeing it as he's going down, the first thing you notice is at least I see a bunch of little like circles of malice just hanging around in the overworld, and we've seen these
Yeah,
before. I'm assuming these might lead you like if you dive right into them, or if you're on the overworld and you jump into them, they're gonna lead you into like a bigger cave.
maybe.
That's
Yeah,
my guess. Because I mean, like that could just be like a hole that's been either brought up to the sky with an island or just Malice has somehow completely just destroyed the terrain down there. That it's just opened up a
oh my
window into
god,
a cave.
I just realized we never seen the outskirts of the game, have we?
What
In
do you
Breath
mean?
of the in the original game, it was just air. You would just fall
Yeah.
off the mountain. There's water. Hyrule is an island. It is a map. Well, it's a country, but it's essentially an island. I
I
mean,
mean, I think the walling Gerudo is just it keeps going on in desert that it hits mountains, but most corners, yeah, it is surrounded by ocean, or at
I don't
least
think
that's
it
what we're
was it like
presumed.
that before.
Yeah.
Oh, it just seems like more because like you can see farther out. It seems more.
I mean, they might extend the barriers of this Hyrule. We have no way of knowing quite yet.
Yeah, I can you see Gerudo here? Oh yeah, you can. I see it.
Well, that's one of the theories that we saw. It wasn't in this trailer, but it was in one of the images we saw. Apparently, Gerudo Town might be missing as well.
What the hell?
Like we've seen like shots of like the area going like right near the desert, and it looks like where the town should be is gone. But
Maybe
I
there
don't
is
know if
some
that's
terrain changes.
it might be either that or like it just didn't load in, or maybe the shot wasn't like actually lining up to where Gerudo Town should have been. I'm not confident enough in that theory to talk about that one. But I want to talk about one more thing before I get into that theory, but you can see more of these glyphs that are hanging around as well. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what their use is going to be for yet, but they're all over the overworld. They're huge.
Yeah, so there's glyphs and
But
there's malice. I assume they're going to be very similar in function.
if you look when he's descending, you see the area where Korok Forest should be. It's not there
Um,
anymore.
so I see he looks straight at the Zonai, then he looks at
I'm
Hyrule
I'm paused at
Castle.
I'm paused at the 1131 mark, and you can see Death Mountain, you can see Hyrule Castle, and you can see like the entrance to the Korok Forest, and then where the forest should be. There's nothing.
Okay, so 1131, I see Death
Yeah,
Mountain. I don't remember where the forest is.
it's like right in between the mountain and the castle.
Like where that
It's
little inlet is, like where the river goes around.
yeah. Usually the river is goes, I believe,
Well,
right in front or behind Korok Forest. It's just not there.
there is a noticeable lack of trees as well.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, it may not just be rendered in, but I would at least think that you would be able to see Deku, so that is a little
And
concerning.
that's the thing. This is not the first time we've noticed that the Deku tree at the very least is missing. So I'm not saying it's confirmed, but this is like the
I mean,
second or third time we've noticed the Deku tree is just not there.
so it this might be a little bit of copium, but I mean the Koroks are there. It
Yep.
almost looks like that they left home because that guy had a backpack.
Yeah.
So he could have left home. We know that the Koroks are there, so maybe the forest is still there. But it seems like they've left home. They're not. They're not. What was wrong with them before? They were just missing.
Yeah, they were just hidden out. There
It's
was
similar to the Wind Waker side quest as well, where they were
yeah.
just out there. So I assume they just left home, and I mean, it could be as simple as
Well,
Deku Tree
if
is
you
dead.
read if you read the text, it's of that one Korok, it's I need help finding my friend or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if like the Deku tree's been shot into the sky because if you look at the coordinates throughout the gameplay, it goes all the way up to like the 1500s and you can still see stuff above you.
Hmm.
And that first Sky Island we were at, I think it was like 5 or 600. So they
Hmm.
go very high.
Yeah.
So my theory is either A, the Deku tree and like the Korok forest was like partially shot into the sky, or like those balls of malice that we saw in the last trailer just get shot down and just like destroys the Korok forest. Like I can't
I mean,
tell
it could be that
100%.
they like warp them like underground, and maybe it's like an underground Deku
And
forest.
that's also a very big good possibility.
Yeah,
I mean, just
and
looking at what we can see, it doesn't look like the ground is like burned or anything, but
yeah,
it could just be like a processing thing. But
and if
the
it
Korok
really
forest is
has been
gone.
if it really been a significant amount of years. I mean, I know it's a stretch, but the Deku tree could have died. The one thing that was supporting life for the entire forest, and the entire forest just died.
But I will say, like, it hasn't been that many years. It's been maybe half a decade.
Again, like I
I
said, it's a
don't think
stretch, but
that big of a tree is not going to disappear that quickly.
yeah,
Never say never, but
it's
I'm
just
willing
like,
to believe that yeah.
do we see Kakariko? Do we see other significant places? Because it seems like
Well,
Lost
that's the
Woods
thing.
is gone, and
You
Gerudo Town is seemingly gone.
Gerudo Town could be gone. I'm not convinced on that one. And the problem with like Hateno and Kakariko
We
is
saw Hateno. That is there. We know it's there.
yes, but I mean like in the last show, like Kakariko is just surrounded by mountains, so we've been
Hmm.
near the area, but we cannot see Kakariko.
Okay. Yeah.
And then yeah, you see the usual Malice under Hyrule Castle. You see the Malice shooting out of Death Mountain,
What's
but
really
we've known
cool is
about that for a
that
while.
this Malice is different, which is kind of cool too.
Yeah,
It's not the same Malice, which is
yeah, but I
interesting as
mean,
well.
we really can't see a lot per se, but I mean, like, I'm sure Kakariko's still there. We know Hateno is.
Yeah, and
I
the video
wouldn't.
is a little fuzzy too, so
I mean,
um,
my only theory about what's it called? The desert is we saw in the last trailer that there was like a bunch of sand seals making like a huge ruckus and like just like they were leaving the desert or at
mhm,
least trying to. So maybe something happens in the desert that like completely wipes out the Gerudo
yeah.
town. But
And here's
I mean,
hoping too. I mean, we talk about, I think from my perspective, I think we're at least talking about these things happened and we have to figure out why. I'm hoping that we go there and we watch it happen, and like
that would be so
there's like
cool.
some sort of story, because again, a couple of their major problems with the original game have been more than I would say competently solved. Durability, climbing, um, and then our biggest concern was how different was this game going to be. And I think before I was like, okay, a new Zelda game, whatever. Now I think I'm a little bit more excited after watching this. So now my two biggest questions are dungeons, because we already basically have confirmation of shrines, and
Mhm.
story. And I'm still holding out for the both of those things.
I will say, I think they've been done a very good job hiding out the story,
Yeah.
just like from certain like questionnaires they've sent out. I do believe the story is going to be much more involved,
Yeah.
and I do think that we are getting more traditional dungeons.
Hmm.
I'm not going to call them like what we've expected Skyward Sword and before, but we're not going to get Divine Beast again, obviously.
Hmm.
But we will. I think there's plenty of places for dungeons to show up. I think there could be one in Death Mountain. I think there could be one around the Korok Forest. I think there could be one somewhere in the Great Plateau area. Like, there's so many areas in the world that just were begging for actual dungeons that they just
Yeah.
didn't show up. And I think these changes in the world actually make it so that these could actually happen.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm sorry I kind of like took over there for most of it, because
No,
it's
you're
like,
good.
I mean, this was like
I'm
your discussion, so, and I just like, yeah, I
No,
have all
I
these
mean,
theories.
I'm just happy to see you actually hyped for this game now because in the past you weren't like to the point that this looks like DLC or whatever, but I could tell you were not very excited for this
I
game
was
because they just
worried.
weren't showing a lot.
I would say that I'm not at the point where it was DLC, but I was definitely worried because they just refused to show anything, and it just, and I mean, we had the sky islands, we had the skydiving, we seemingly had new rune abilities. It's just like,
Well, I mean,
what could they sell me on this game without it being like, it just seemed too similar to the original game, because like with Majora's Mask and what
that's bait for like direct sequel.
Phantom
Yeah,
Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, they were so different. This is the first time that it's a direct sequel and we're in the same world, same
yeah,
mechanics, same mechanics, more or less. And so
I know what you mean.
I was just worried, after waiting 5 6 years, what the fuck are we waiting for? And so I think now I'm, the relief is, the weight has been lifted. I'm a little bit more excited now. I have theories running through my head. Um, yeah, so I'm a little bit more excited now. Before I was just like, what the fuck? What's going on?
My my theory is that this is the longest time a Zelda game has ever been in development. And this game has used probably an enhanced engine that Breath of the Wild had, but still the same engine, the same general world, a lot of the same assets. There was no way they spent this long on a new Zelda game and it wasn't going to be massive.
Hmm.
And I really feel like it's either just Aonuma or just the Zelda team. They do not want to show this game.
Yeah.
Like they have gone above and beyond to show
And
the bare minimum.
yeah, so I think, again, like I said, they showed enough here where I'm satisfied and I'm a little bit more excited. However, I would be very disappointed if that was it. And now we know
It's not.
everything about the game.
No.
Yeah, I know it's not, but like that would be so, I
Literally,
would be heartbroken.
I feel like we saw more at E3 2016 on just the Great Plateau in that one time that we first saw the game than we did at any point for like the last 4 years of marketing this game.
Hmm.
They just aren't showing us anything, and I think
And part of me wants to say, oh, that's a good thing. Part of me wants to say that's a bad thing. So, like, for example, with Sun and Moon, it's not my favorite game, but it's at least competent compared to Sword and Shield, where Sun and Moon's hype cycle, where they showed fucking everything. They showed every Pokemon, and then in Sword and Shield, they just showed nothing, and then it just was a wet fart of a release. And then now they're doing a nice balance of both, and then Scarlet and Violet was at least a decently competent game. So here,
yeah.
it could be hit or miss. They could be showing absolutely nothing, and then just all the secrets come out in the game, and you're just like, whoa, or they just show nothing and they actually showed everything. So
My best guess is they showed a lot of Breath of the Wild because it was a brand new take on Zelda. They needed to try to sell people on it.
yeah,
Now that Breath of the Wild has sold over three times the amount of the best-selling Zelda game in the past,
hmm
they really don't need to show us much.
yeah,
If
and
we
even if
liked
they
Breath of the Wild, we're gonna buy it regardless. They really don't have to convince a ton of
I
people.
mean, I mean, thinking about maybe the next Zelda game or what could have been a sequel, they could have done an entirely different world, different Links and Zeldas, and still had a Breath of the Wild world or styled world. It's just,
Yeah,
things were in different places, but this one is just so interesting because it is in the same world. And
yeah.
the question is how much is different, and I think some of that has been answered here.
Well, I think if they're willing to spend over half a decade on a game in the same world, same universe, same characters, I would hope they've got enough ideas to justify it, and I have no doubt in my mind they do.
Yeah. All right. Well, I
Yeah.
think that we've somehow sunk an hour out of this, as we do, but um, I think you're glad that I'm more excited about this game, and I think this is the discussion
Yes.
that we've been wanting to have for a while because every time we come back from a direct, we're just like, "Yep, Tears of the Kingdom was here, but it was here, and that's about it."
Well, I mean, all we've seen is like 90 seconds each time, if that, of Link just aimlessly exploring around the universe. No explanation. Little tiny story bits here or there, but we still can't connect anything.
Yeah,
We literally can't. We don't even know how this game's gonna start. We have a
yeah,
guess, but we don't know.
yeah. But I think that this is definitely something that we've been waiting for to finally get this out, to finally talk about it more than finally able to get something out of this game for once in 6 years. So we'll
And
see
it
how we
comes out
feel.
in
Yeah.
6 weeks till release.
So we'll see
All
how
it
we
is,
feel
6 weeks.
post. I want to start doing. I think initial thoughts and a review might be too much, but I do want to do like a spoiler discussion if I play deep enough into the game, and I want to start doing that more with major releases. But I think when was the last major release? Thinking other than Kirby, which I think is slightly below Zelda, Mario, Smash. When
I
was the last
mean,
major release?
Fire Emblem if you count it, and then Pokemon.
And I think Pokemon comes out too often to really do that. So I think that finally talking about Zelda, I think it would be nice to have a spoiler discussion for one of these.
Well, I'll be here for it.
Yeah. Um,
But
but yeah, if you're interested in my stuff, I might have a Zelda video coming soon. I'll figure out something for that script. I am gonna probably lighten up on my hours. I'm going back to school, so that'll be
mhm.
good. But again, I'm gonna try to manage my time better, which was most of my problem before. And I think that mine is a maybe, but I think we can expect a video out of you soon, Zelda related.
I'd probably say here in a couple weeks. I've been going through Breath of the Wild. I put about 35 hours into it. I'm getting closer to finishing it up. So once I'm done with that, you can expect a commentary, not a commentary, like a discussion video talking about how it is to go back to Breath of the Wild 6 years later. And maybe one more video before Tears of the Kingdom comes out. Let's see. No
Yeah,
promises.
yeah. And that's just
But
about Zelda, but we have a ton more videos coming your way. I know that we took a kind of a weird little break there, but I'm trying my best here. I just started a full-time job, so I'm kind of carrying the weight of the whole channel because I have to upload it, edit
yes.
it, and all that. So um, yeah, we're back, kind of. We never left, but there was a weird little gap there. But yeah, expect some good content here in the summer. And I guess the next time we'll be together is probably post Tears of the Kingdom, right?
That's weird to think about, but yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. Well, I think it. I mean, I'm closing it, but you can close it if you want. Any closing remarks?
Uh, I mean, the game looks great. We've pretty much got all of the info out of the trailer that we can. I feel like the next 6 weeks are going to be agonizingly slow because I just want to play this game so much.
Hmm.
But thank you guys for watching. If you haven't, give us a like and subscribe and watch our other content. It's all great. And we've got a
I
lot
know
more
it's
stuff coming at you in the
long,
future.
but we're gonna try to release shorts to at least incentivize you to watch the whole thing. But if you did stick around, we're happy you did.
And if you stuck around this long, go check out our 2 hour Zelda tier list. We get pretty divisive on it, so come
Yeah,
get mad at us.
it gets hot, but it only gets hot like halfway through. So you gotta
Yeah,
stick around.
it warms up as you go.
Yeah.
All
Oh
right, thank you
God.
guys for watching, and we'll see you later.
Bye. Warm